Have you ever really stopped and wondered why we do this? Why we don't just all live on our own? Why do we build cities, form governments, create entire nations? Well, turns out a philosopher was asking that exact same question over 2,000 years ago. Okay, let's crack open Aristotle's Politics, a 2,300-year-old book that tries to get to the very bottom of why we live in societies. So, this is the big one, the fundamental question. And for Aristotle, this isn't just about, safety in numbers or making it easier to trade things. Nope. For him, the answer goes way deeper, right to the very core of what it even means to be human. This is where he starts to unravel our entire complex world. And here's his starting point. It's actually pretty simple. Every single community, from a tiny book club to a whole country, is formed to achieve something good. So think about what that means. If the state is the biggest, most all-encompassing community there is, then it must be aiming for the highest, the greatest good of all. The question is, what is that highest good? To figure that out, to find this so-called highest good, we first have to get a handle on what the state's true purpose is in the first place. And I want you to notice that key phrase, for the sake of a good life. See, for Aristotle, the state, or the polis, as he called it in Greek, isn't just about survival. It's not some simple contract for mutual protection. It's the essential platform, the only place where human beings can truly flourish and reach their full potential. So what you're seeing here is basically Aristotle's game plan. To understand something big and complex like the state, you have to break it down. You can't start at the top. You start at the bottom. The state is made of villages, and villages are made of the most basic community of all, the household. So to understand the whole, we've got to start with its smallest parts. Okay, so let's zoom right in on that foundational unit, the household. For Aristotle, this is where it all begins. This is the seed from which everything else grows. And inside that household, he says you'll find these three core relationships. Now for him, each one of these isn't just about family. It represents a different kind of rule. And he argues that if you can understand these, you hold the key to understanding everything, from how a king rules his kingdom to how citizens govern a state. And this brings us to one of Aristotle's most, let's say, challenging and controversial ideas, his theory of a natural hierarchy. Now, to explain this, he comes up with this concept of the natural slave. It is absolutely crucial to understand his specific argument here. He's not talking about prisoners of war. He's arguing that there's a type of person who, in his view, can understand reason but can't fully possess it themselves. And because of that, their best path is to carry out the plans of a rational master, which he saw as a relationship that was beneficial for both parties. And to back this up, he draws these analogies from what he saw as the natural world. Just as the soul should rule the body and reason should guide our passions, he saw this ruler and ruled dynamic literally everywhere. For him, this kind of hierarchy wasn't just a social convention. He believed it was a fundamental principle of nature, necessary for order and for everything to function properly. And look, here it is, right from the text itself, in the plainest terms possible. This is the direct, logical conclusion of his argument from nature. Now, obviously, this is a viewpoint that is profoundly and rightly rejected today, but it is absolutely central to understanding his political framework from the ground up. Okay, let's shift gears a bit, because beyond these power dynamics, the household also had a vital economic purpose. And here, Aristotle made another really crucial distinction between two very different ways of getting wealthy. On one side, you have what he calls household management. This is the natural, necessary art of getting the things your family actually needs for good life. Food, shelter, clothing. And really importantly, it has a natural limit. You only need so much. But then there's commerce, retail trade. And its goal is totally different. Unlimited profit. And for Aristotle, this was completely unnatural. He uses this really simple example of a shoe to make his point. A shoe's proper, natural use is to be worn. But you can also use that same shoe for exchange, to trade it for money. That's its secondary, less natural use. The problem for Aristotle begins when we forget the primary purpose of things and we focus only on the exchange part. And the perfect cautionary tale for this whole idea, the myth of King Midas. Here's a guy whose touch turned everything to gold. He confused the symbol of wealth, gold, with actual wealth, the stuff you need to live. He had infinite money, but he literally starved to death. But his absolute harshest criticism, the thing he hated most, was reserved for usury, what we would call charging interest.
For Aristotle, money is just a tool for exchange. It can't reproduce. The very idea of money birthing more money was to him the most unnatural and detestable way of getting wealth imaginable.
All right, so after digging into the household, its power structures, its economics, we can finally zoom back out and try to answer that first big question. This brings us to Aristotle's ultimate and most famous conclusion. This is it. This is probably the single most famous line from the entire work. We form states, we build societies because it is fundamentally in our nature to do so. It's not really a choice, it's just an expression of who we are. But political animal means so much more than just being social, like a bee in a hive or an ant in a colony. He points out that other animals can make sounds to signal pleasure or pain. But humans, we have speech. We have the ability to reason about huge concepts like justice and injustice, good and evil. And it's this shared moral understanding that truly creates a family, and ultimately the state. Now, this next idea, it might sound a little backward at first. How can the state possibly come before the individual people who make it up? What he means is not prior in time, but prior in importance and purpose. The whole, he says, is always more important than its parts. He gives us this powerful analogy to help us get it. Think about it. A hand that's been cut off from the body. It isn't really a hand anymore, is it? I mean, you can call it that, but it can't do what a hand is supposed to do. He says it's the same for a person. An individual can only achieve their true purpose, their true function as a human being, when they are part of a political community. And he really drives this point home with this unforgettable line. To live apart from the polis, from the community, is to be something other than human. You're either less than human, like a beast, or you're more than human, like a god. But for the rest of us, life within a society isn't optional, it's essential. So Aristotle leaves us with this huge idea. We don't just live in society for convenience or safety. We do it to fulfill our very nature. And that brings us to the final critical question that he sets up for the rest of his work, and really for all of us. If the state exists to help us achieve the good life, then what exactly is our role? What is our purpose in making that happen?